Some punishments are so strange that it is hard to believe they were ever real. One of the most bizarre is the story of the goat's tongue licking punishment. According to old writings, this method involved tying a victim down, soaking their feet in salty water, and letting a goat lick the soles until the skin started to peel away. While this idea has appeared in several medieval documents, historians still debate whether it truly happened or whether it was simply a story meant to frighten people. So, what is the truth behind this curious and unsettling tale? What was goat's tongue licking punishment? The goat's tongue punishment is described as a form of torture, where a goat was used to slowly torment a person by licking their feet. First, the victim's bare feet were drenched in salt water or sprinkled with salt. Then, a hungry goat was brought close and encouraged to lick the soles clean. Because a goat's tongue is rough, similar to sandpaper, each lick could scrape the skin a little more. Over time, the repeated licking was said to cause severe irritation, extreme tickling sensations, and eventually, the peeling of the skin. This punishment supposedly worked in two ways. First, it created unbearable tickling and stress, and second, it caused physical damage to the sensitive skin on the feet. Some stories claimed that the torture could last for hours and was used to force prisoners to confess or reveal secrets. Where do the earliest descriptions come from? One of the first known mentions of this method appears in 1115, when the French monk Guibert de Nogent referred to a similar practice in his writings, the monodies. Later, in the early 1500s, Italian jurist and monk Franciscus Brunus de San Severino included the goat's tongue in his book Tractatus de Indiciis et Tortura. Interestingly, Brunus was critical of torture in general and described this method partly to show how cruel and unusual such practices could be. He did not claim to have personally seen it, but gathered accounts from other sources. In 1537, Italian lawyer Ippolito de Marsili published another list of torture methods that also mentioned goat's tongue licking. Because these records appeared in respected legal texts, some historians believe the technique could have been real, while others argue it was only folklore repeated over generations. How was the punishment supposedly carried out? Accounts of goat's tongue licking share similar details about how the process worked. The victim would be tied to a bench or a wooden frame so they could not pull their feet away. Sometimes their legs were strapped down to prevent kicking. Next, salt water was applied generously to the soles. The salt not only attracted the goat, but also softened the skin, making it more vulnerable. A goat was then brought near and allowed to lick the feet over and over. Witnesses claimed that at first the sensation was excruciatingly ticklish, causing the victim to laugh uncontrollably. As the licking continued, the sensitive nerves in the soles would become overstimulated, leading to pain instead of laughter. Finally, after long exposure, the goat's rough tongue could wear away the top layers of skin, creating bleeding sores. While these descriptions sound specific, no confirmed court records survive to prove that any authorities actually used this punishment in real cases. Did goat's tongue licking really happen? This is one of the biggest questions historians have about the goat's tongue. Some experts think the method was probably never used in practice, or at least not commonly. They point out that the evidence mostly comes from legal manuals and not from court documents or eyewitness testimony. Even Franciscus Brunus, who wrote about the method, seemed uncertain whether it had really been done or was only a rumored technique. Other scholars suggest that it might have been tried occasionally, but was so rare that it never became a regular part of judicial torture. Another possibility is that stories about goat's tongue licking served as warnings, examples of the extreme measures that authorities might threaten but did not actually use. Because medieval Europe often used fear as a way to keep order, legends about creative tortures helped build the power of judges and inquisitors without them needing to apply every technique for real. Why did this punishment become so famous? Part of the reason goat's tongue licking is still mentioned today is simply because it sounds so strange and memorable. Unlike whips, racks, or thumbscrews, the idea of a goat being involved in torture is unusual. The combination of something normally harmless, a farm animal, and the image of slow, painful damage created a story that stuck in people's minds. Over time, writers, historians, and even fiction authors repeated the tale, helping it spread beyond the legal books where it first appeared. Some scholars have compared this to other legendary punishments, like the Iron Maiden, which was probably more myth than reality, but became famous because it was shocking. Whether or not it was real, the goat's tongue-licking punishment is an example of how fear and imagination can sometimes be as powerful as the truth. How does this story connect to other medieval torture methods? The Middle Ages were full of punishments designed to humiliate and intimidate. Many of them targeted sensitive parts of the body, such as the soles of the feet, the fingers, or the head. Bastinado, for example, involved beating the feet with rods or canes. Unlike bastinado, goat's tongue licking was described as a method that started with tickling and only later turned to pain. This combination of sensations may have made it seem especially cruel, even if it was less physically destructive than other tortures. The idea that tickling could become torture shows how medieval justice blurred the line between psychological and physical punishment. Whether or not goats were really used in this way, the story reflects a time when creative cruelty was accepted as part of legal systems. What can we learn from the legend of goat's tongue licking? This story teaches us how powerful fear and imagination were in medieval societies. Even if the punishment was rarely or never used, the idea that such a bizarre and humiliating method could happen was enough to terrify people. It also reminds us that legal systems have not always been guided by fairness or evidence. Sometimes they relied on the threat of extreme cruelty to force obedience. By studying these stories critically, we learn how important it is today to protect human rights and demand proof before accepting claims about punishment. Whether goat's tongue licking was ever a real punishment or simply a frightening legend, it has earned a place in the history of torture as one of the most unusual stories ever told. It shows how the human imagination can create powerful images that survive for centuries. What do you think about goat's tongue licking? Was it an actual method or just a myth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to learn more about punishment worldwide and throughout the ages, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.